Welcome to Portal, Arizona, a geologic wonderland and the most tropical area in the state of Arizona. Now, you may be saying, tropical? Arizona is literally nowhere near the tropics. Well, we are near Mexico and the Sierra Madre Occidental Range, which brings up a lot of tropical species, including jaguars. So, stay tuned. I'm going to tell you all about this fantastic place.
Let's cover how this amazing and often forgotten area formed and became the wonderful place that it is today. Seas existed here early, around 300 million years ago. In the Jurassic, uplift occurred as the seas began to recede. Now we gotta talk about the Farallon subduction, which is really important to pretty much anything in US Western geology. The Farallon is an ancient oceanic plate, much like the Pacific plate, and what it did was subduct, which means going under, North America at a really weird flat angle. Usually plates kind of tend to just dive into the mantle. This one just sifted along the bottom for quite a while, and it caused a lot more uplift in the southern Arizona region. This uplift was primarily due to volcanism at the time, as the plate migrated east, and thus with it spread volcanism going eastward. The plate also thinned out the upper crust of North America, making it one of the thinnest crustal areas anywhere on the planet. This caused faults and fractures in this area of ancient Arizona, which easily allowed magma to rise up to the surface. Magma that didn't reach the surface pooled up underground and solidified into plutonic rocks like granite, which can now be seen predominantly in areas like the Cochise Stronghold. Around 30 to 26.9 million years ago, a lot of magma began building up in a series of faults and fractures near modern-day Portal and Chiricahua National Monument in southeastern Arizona. A huge volcanic complex was formed from the giant magma chamber. It was likely one of the largest in North America at the time. This eventually led to a lot of pressure buildup, and around 26.5 million years ago, a cataclysmic eruption that ejected 120 cubic miles of debris occurred. To put that into perspective, that is over 1,000 times more powerful than the eruption at Mount St. Helens in 1980. This eruption ultimately deposited a lot of ash and extrusive volcanic rock like rhyolite. Extrusive volcanic rock is essentially just volcanic rock that is formed on the surface from volcanism. This drained the almost entire magma chamber under the volcano and caused the whole volcanic complex to collapse downward from the instability caused by the hollow space. And thus, the Turkey Creek caldera was born. But the evolution of this area was far from over.
So, as I mentioned before, this area is very volcanic in nature, and we're actually in a collapsed caldera right now. So, the rock that you see behind me is extrusive igneous rock, which means that it's rock that formed on the surface from volcanism. The most important rock in this area is arguably rhyolite, which is in a similar vein to granite, but granite forms deep under the earth and rhyolite forms on the surface, although they do have very similar mineral composition. So, let's talk more about the Turkey Creek caldera.
Crustal thinning continued slightly, caused by the friction from the shallow Farallon plate subduction, but other forces became present as well. The San Andreas Fault formed in California around 28 million years ago from the subduction of the spreading zone between the Farallon plate and the Pacific plate. This meant that part of North America in Western California was now sliding in a completely different direction than the rest of the continent. This caused immense extensional forces which stretched a lot of the Western American landscape. In a huge region encompassing all of Nevada, most of Arizona, and some parts of California, Utah, Idaho, and Oregon, the stretching began to form steep mountains called fault block mountains, which rose up to accommodate the stress being imposed on the crust from extension. To learn more about one of the theories surrounding this specific extensional event, watch my Great Basin video. One of these areas that rose up as a fault block mountain was the Turkey Creek caldera region. The uplift caused faulting, which began to crack the now compacted and lithified, meaning solidified into a rock, ash, which was the aforementioned rhyolite. This cracking exposed weak points in the rock, which further allowed them to fracture, erode, and weather away, which left this region's most iconic feature, the over 10,000 rock pillars called hoodoos that dot the western, less steep side of the mountain today.
Right behind me is a part of Cave Creek, and this is the John Hands Waterfall. Water is an essential part of the Chiricahua Mountains and the Turkey Creek Caldera Formation. All of the wonderful geology I've been talking about so far wouldn't look this epic if water wasn't shaping it into the magnificent features that you see.
The region receives a good amount of rainfall, even for modern-day Arizona standards. This is due to the range's large height, which is able to catch clouds and wring them out like saturated kitchen towels. Pair this with southern Arizona's reliable summer and winter wet seasons, and you have a recipe for a fairly fertile area. Water and the previously mentioned uplift and fracturing also led to the formation of the epic volcanic cliffs that you can find on the steep eastern scarp side of the mountain.
Speaking of water, water is probably the primary reason why there is so many species of plants and animals here. In fact, this is probably the rainiest part of the southwestern desert regions. So let's talk about some of those really interesting species and why I dubbed this place as tropical, even though it's not near the tropics.
Due to the close proximity with the large Mexican Sierra Madre Occidental Range and the Colorado Plateau, the area shares a lot of species with the North American Rockies and the northern/central parts of Mexico. This makes it one of the most biodiverse regions in the entire US, with upwards of thousands of animal and plant species. Some notable species include, on the bird side of things, elegant trogons, Mexican jays, and Mexican chickadees. On the mammal side of things, there's the Chiricahua fox squirrels, the white-nosed coatis, which personally I think is the cutest animal in the entirety of North America, ocelots, American black bears, and even jaguars. On the reptile side of things, we have stuff like the Arizona alligator lizard and Gila monsters. As far as amphibians go, there is a lot. I mean a lot, but I think one of the standouts is probably the Chiricahua leopard frog. And that concludes my deep dive on the Turkey Creek Caldera in Arizona, probably my most favorite geologic region anywhere in the Southwest, if I have to be honest. So thank you very much for watching. Remember, new videos every 2 weeks, so stay tuned.